Alright, here we are another night where there's nowhere to go, nothing to do, and no one to look up to. All the great podcast themes have been turned into podcast theme parks, and I don't know about you, but...
Hello, baby, I've been waiting for a Christian Slater podcast.
Welcome back to the Christian Slater Monitor. I'm your host, Oswald Ramirez. You can call me Ozzy, and I'm joined by a special guest host today.
I'm Arkady Kremlinov. You can call me Pasha.
Welcome, Pasha. And we're going to be talking about the 1986 film, The Name of the Rose.
That's right, The Name of the Rose.
Yes. Which, when was the first time you saw this movie? How did you come to be aware of this movie?
You know what? I bought this on DVD. This was a good one because I already owned it on DVD for us to watch. I'm going to guess that it comes from college and probably hunting down or becoming we were always aware of directors, and I was a big fan of Enemy at the Gates. So when you run across things, and I guarantee this was a $5 bin purchase. So when you come across Jean-Jacques Annon, you recognize that from Enemy at the Gates, and that just perpetuates that. Because looking at his stuff, I don't think there's anything else that I don't think I own any more of his movies.
That's really interesting to me because it's not why I asked you to talk about this movie with me. I asked you to talk about it because I know you as a massive fan of Sean Connery.
Oh, that's true as well. That's absolutely true. But maybe not 80s Connery, which is weird.
Well,
Even though that's...
talk about that because, first off, I would say that the way I came to know about this movie was I would see the box at the old Movies, etc., and just see the box for the VHS and be like, oh, this looks weird. Christian Slater on the cover with Sean Connery and some strangeness. And I always kind of wanted to see it, then would forget it existed.
Yeah.
But I guess that this was in a big down period for Sean Connery.
Yeah, he'd come off a number of failures, like Gawain and the Green Knight, and
yes, I watched the Sword of the Valiant. Have you seen that movie?
See, I didn't remember it being... Yes, I've seen it.
How'd you like Sword of the Valiant?
You know what? I've only seen it as a kid or as a young adult, so I wonder. No, it was not. It's not like Excalibur. It's a little too wacky. It's a little too wacky.
It's pretty bad.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
it's very weird stuff from Connery. You hope he was able to retire early because of it, though he didn't retire that early.
He didn't retire that early, no. But that's interesting that you say that it's that wacky, because it's probably a performance on par with like him playing Agamemnon or somebody like that.
It's strange, and there are a lot of strange effects in it and stuff. It's kind of so bad it's good almost kind of movie. It's really bad.
Yeah, it's bad.
He had also done a movie called 5 Days, One Summer that I did not see.
Oh, I want to see that movie. I've never seen that. It's a love story, right?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. And he did the one called Wrong is Right.
Which I love.
Really?
I love Wrong is Right.
I haven't seen that. I should see that.
I own it on... that's another one. That's a Richard Brooks... No, that's a James...
Richard Brooks.
Richard Brooks?
Right.
It is a Richard Brooks, yeah. I like Wrong is Right, even though it doesn't work. Part of the movie thinks it's a comedy, and it doesn't work. Like, the first half of the movie doesn't work. But it also has J.G. Spradling? G.D. Spradling?
Yeah.
Of Godfather, Apocalypse Now fame.
The late G.D. Spradling. Good actor.
Who's from Oklahoma.
Yes.
Yeah. Who's a very good actor. And some other people. I think John Saxon may be in it. And Catherine Ross, who was a big love interest when I was a kid.
But then from 1981, doesn't he? I'm forgetting now the movies he's in. He has Time Bandits as well. Did that not do well?
I don't think Time Bandits did well.
Okay, I watched that. That was more fun than I remembered.
Yeah, there's Time Bandits, and Meteor is before that, and Cuba.
Cuba I watched. Have you seen Cuba?
No, how is Cuba?
It's a wild one. I didn't hate it so much. It's another one. Doesn't really work, but it's kind of interesting. Connery's quite good, and it has a good cast also as Jack Weston and Martin Balsam and one other really good guy. Oh, Denham Elliott. Then it has Chris Sarandon and that one lady. Her name was like Amy Brooks or something. She's the main lady from Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the Philip Kaufman one.
Oh.
She's pretty, but she's not she never was too big.
Yeah.
She's playing Cuban in this. Hector Elizondo's in there.
Also playing Cuban.
Yes. There Very much so. As is Chris Sarandon.
Yeah. Oh, that's there. That's not good.
Yeah. And I guess not. I was unclear in the movie whether or not Martin Balsam was playing Cuban or not. He may have been playing American, but he had a Latino style mustache and a tan, so it was hard to tell.
Maybe one of the great B movie actors or character actors who made a career playing other people or other nationalities. Balsam has an amazing career.
He really did. He was also in the Anderson tapes with Sean Connery,
which is a Lumet film,
yeah.
and he's in Murder on the Orient Express.
You're right. And I like both of those movies.
Yeah. Murder on the Orient Express is a great one.
I like it too. It's kind of remembered, I think, as being kind of cheesy compared to a lot of 70s movies, but I think it's a lot of fun.
I think Albert Finney is a lot of fun.
Yes.
It's a very different Perot.
What do you think about the Kenneth Branagh one?
I don't like it. It's not fun. It's never fun. Although I do like Johnny Depp in it a lot.
I forgot he was in it.
Yeah, he's the Richard Widmark character.
Oh, whoa.
Problem with I think Lumet recognizes that in his version, you kind of have to show. They start off showing, and you sacrifice knowing what the movie's going to be about, but they show the crime, not the killing of Richard Widmark, but they show the crime, the Lindbergh kidnapping crime.
Oh.
At the beginning in headlines and like little reenactments. Yes. And I think that's an important part. I think that's what Branagh gets wrong, is he doesn't want to show you that and give that away at the beginning. But you kind of have to, otherwise you're just telling people later on.
Well, that's a good point. I didn't think of that. What I was thinking when I saw the Branagh one, because I had not seen the Lumet one when I saw the Branagh one. And I was like, this kind of sucks. Then I went back and watched the Lumet one, and I was like, oh, I think he assumes we've seen the Lumet one, because in the Lumet one, when people are lying to you and stuff, you can kind of piece together lies they tell and stuff. You're like, oh, I've been keeping track of the movie. They're lying about this. And you really can't in the Branagh one.
No.
Yeah, it's like you still can't solve the mystery. I guess this is a thing about mysteries, and we'll get into it in this one, is because this is a mystery movie, is that I guess like in Sir Arthur Conan Doyle would give you no pieces to solve the mystery. You would just kind of wait around for Sherlock Holmes to tell you all the things he had induced and processed. And then there was Agatha Christie, and she would give you part of the clues, but not enough to solve it. And then there were these two guys that wrote these books as a fake detective named Ellery Queen. And they would give you all of the clues so that you might be able to solve the mystery if you really tried, if you were following. That's sort of an evolution of mysteries. He also, when I was surprised with how bad they said his career was doing at this point, Connery's, was that he had been in Never Say Never Again. Did that not do well?
Yeah, I wonder if that was a big movie, because it's not under the umbrella of James Bond. I mean, it is a James Bond, but it's an unofficial James Bond movie.
It's the one with the Carly Simon song, right?
It is not.
No, it's not the one with the Nobody Does It Better?
No, that's Nobody Does It Better isn't that from Octopussy?
Maybe.
Yeah, this one does not have, so Never Say Never Again is a remake of Thunderball, but it's because Ian Fleming or Robert Broccoli had made a deal with another partner at one point before they really got going, and he only owned the rights, or partially owned the rights, to Thunderball. And then never came aboard, and then sued them later, and then won the rights after the fact that they had already made Thunderball to maintain those rights, and he got paid some money. And then later in the 80s, remade Thunderball as Never Say Never Again, and it's a huge slap in the face because Connery comes back to play that.
Yes, and do you know why at all?
Maybe for money, probably just for money.
Okay.
So I'm sure Never Say Never Again was probably did make money. I mean, it's not a terrible movie. It does have Klaus Maria Branda in it.
Yeah, I don't remember it being too bad.
No.
As far as those go, yeah. But after this movie, The Name of the Rose comes out the same year as The Highlander, which, like Sword of the Valiant, is a canon films. Golan Globulus, whatever the Menaheim
Yeah, but a little bit better. It's much better made than
Sword of the Valiant. Yes.
Sword of the Valiant. I like Highlander quite a bit.
Oh, me
and
too.
I even kind of like Highlander too.
I don't remember Highlander 2, except for it was always on TV as a kid. I never saw Highlander 1 until probably about 7 years ago or so. And I rewatched it a couple nights ago, and it's a hoot.
Yeah. As far as an
really like
80s sci-fi movie, it's like you could do worse.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of fun. I think it's got just tons of fun stuff in it. Just how much they show you in the mythology and the different time periods. Like, I thought it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's kind of a shame that Highlander 2 is not as much fun. It becomes much more of a sci-fi movie, which is very strange.
Then after this, he goes on this 1986 kicks off a big comeback for Connery.
Oh, 100%. He does Untouchables the next year and wins an Oscar.
His only nomination for an Oscar.
His only nomination, yeah. Which is weird. I think, going back to the Sidney Lumet's, and there are so many Connery Sidney Lumet movies, I think The Offense in 72 or 73 is one of my favorite Connery performances.
He's quite good in it. We differ on how much we enjoy that movie.
Yeah, that's fair.
To me, The Offense is just too downbeat. I think it's good Connery, good looking movie, as many Lumets are. But I a lot of times am not the biggest Lumet fan. In fact, I'd say Murder on the Orient Express is one of the ones I like the best.
Oh, man. Yeah, well, I never I'm not a huge fan of 12 Angry Men.
No.
But I do love...
The Pawnbroker?
I've never seen The Pawnbroker, actually, with Rod Steiger.
Yeah. I don't care for it. What about Failsafe?
What was it?
Failsafe?
I kind of like Failsafe.
Yeah, I'm not big on that one.
I like some of the newer ones. I like Before the Devil Knows You're Dead.
So that has its moments, but it's like not my fave. But it does have parts I like for sure.
Also, an interesting point, though. It's a super downer of a movie.
Yeah, he makes a lot of downers.
Yeah.
That one's like, maybe it's slightly too downery for how wacky of a crime movie it is. I don't know. That's one I should revisit.
I think it's kind of our kind of a movie. I like that one a lot, but I don't like. I like Network. I'm pretty sure you don't, as I recall.
Yeah, I don't remember liking it that much. I should watch it again. Maybe I'd really like it.
I don't like Dog Day Afternoon.
I don't either. No, I don't like Dog Day Afternoon.
I think it's kind of a boring movie.
Yeah, I agree. Kind of boring. I'm trying to think because there are other Sidney Lumet movies I do like though. I'm also not that huge on Prince of the City.
Oh, I do love Prince of the City. I do like Prince of the City quite a bit.
I'm trying to think. There is one other Sidney Lumet movie that I really like, and it's not coming to me. But anyway, also after this, he does a cameo in a movie called Memories of Me as himself. Have you seen this?
No, I don't know that movie.
It is a movie from maybe 1987, 1988, starring Billy Crystal and Albert King as father and son, or Alan King, sorry.
Oh, Alan King, yeah, sure,
not Albert King. That would be wacky. and it has it's directed by Henry Winkler.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Kind of a prototypical Billy Crystal vehicle. A lot of schmarm.
Interesting.
He plays a doctor as a heart attack and has to reconnect with his father, who is like the king of Hollywood extras. And he goes to Hollywood and hangs out with his father, who hangs out with all these extras in various movies and works as an extra. And drinks at a bar called The Last Call or something like that. It has some name, and it's I forget what it's called. And it's the set for it, or their exterior at least, is right by that mural that is in Hollywood of all the movie actors in the movie theater.
It's at Wilcox in Hollywood.
Is it on my street?
Yeah, it's across from the 7-Eleven.
Okay.
It's the one that used to have
you're right. It is across the 7-Eleven.
It
used to be by the porn theater, right? No, that's on Cahuenga. Yeah, the porn shop that is no longer. You're right. It's on my street. The street.
Yeah.
Here. Let's see here. And then he does what after that? It gets good again.
Oh, it gets good. He does two of my favorite movies, The Hunt for Red October and The Russia House.
In 1990. Those are both fantastic. But right before that, I guess he does Indiana Jones 3.
We can skip that.
Really? See, I think that is not the greatest Indiana Jones movie.
No.
But Sean Connery's performance, if you want to talk about, I would nominate him for Best Supporting Actor. He is so good in that movie. Like, he is hilarious to me as Indiana Jones's dad. That movie is pretty fun for just you get the two of the best, if not the two best swashbuckling actors of all time and put them together. And they're both fantastic together, especially Connery, though. That movie is worth a watch just for the Connery action. Also worth a watch because I don't know if they're still on Netflix, but those Indiana Jones movies in 1080p or whatever, the resolution they're on, they are gorgeous.
Are they?
Yes.
The blacks and everything. That's something I always love about the Douglas Slocum cinematography of Raiders of the Lost Ark is the blacks. And watching Name of the Rose. Like, Name of the Rose is absolutely beautiful movie. I think it looks really pretty.
Do you want to go into talking about Name of the Rose?
Oh, no. We can continue about Connery.
Okay, well, that was about as far as I looked into Connery's, that he pretty much gets to this, after this year, he just becomes an A-list star forever. But
yeah, 100%.
They had a hard time getting it funded with him as the star, this movie, because he was doing so poorly. That's how I kind of discovered all of this.
Yeah, I guess whatever. They had been looking for an unknown 50s actor, I guess, for like a year, trying to just go to plays and that sort of thing. And then Connery insisted on coming in and reading. And then once they signed him, whatever studio they were working with dropped them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I read a thing on IMDb that they had considered De Niro, but De Niro wanted to have a sword fight at the end with Bernardo Gui. I'm not sure if that's true or not.
That's hilarious. I watched it with commentary, which was fairly boring. He didn't say anything about that.
Interesting. Well, this is directed by Jean-Jacques Annaud, and this was his first movie after Quest for Fire, which I've never seen.
He's made a lot of movies about animals
and outdoors. He seems like outdoors. Yeah, because he did this. He did The Bear, which I watched.
The Bear.
Boy, that was boring, but it reunited two of the big David Mamet actors, Jack Wallace and Bart the Bear.
The Bear. That's hilarious.
And then I did watch Enemy at the Gates, which I had never seen, and I liked it quite a bit. That was probably my favorite of his movies I watched. I liked it. Then I did not watch Quest for Fire.
Yeah, it's
wasn't around very easily for streaming. A lot of his movies are on various streaming sites.
Yeah. Oh, I like war movies. I'm a huge fan of war movies, and I think despite Enemy of the Gates comes out pretty close to Saving Private Ryan and Thin Red Line.
Mm-hmm. 3 or 4
one of those
years later.
one of those I don't care for, but the other one I like. Enemy at the Gates. It's nice and grimy. I really enjoy the Russian front during World War II, which you never see anything about.
Now, both that and this, and I guess Quest for Fire, all have Ron Perlman.
That's true. That's right as well. Yeah.
I guess that Jean-Jacques Annaud said that he just likes hanging with Ron Perlman.
In the commentary, I think it said he discovered Ron Perlman.
Interesting.
I don't know how much that's how far that goes. Also claims that the nose in Name of the Rose is not a prosthetic.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Which makes me wonder about Ron Perlman.
Yeah, that's odd.
Yeah. Yeah, he claims everything in the commentary for Name of the Rose is about how all the props they had to make and how the sets they had to make, and the whole opening is something that they went back and shot after they'd already wrapped principal photography of them riding up to the monastery and everything. And all of the only VFX shot in the movie is a shot on the hilltop, which is a matte painting of the monastery in the far, far background. Everything else they built shot in a real place.
I also watched 7 Years in Tibet.
Oh, I like 7 Years in Tibet.
I liked it more than I thought I would.
Yeah, it's a good one.
It's got some funny. Do you think that with Ed Harris and Brad Pitt being such cool Nazis, and how easily they let these two Nazis off the hook in 7 Years in Tibet, that maybe like Jean-Jacques Annaud's parents were in the Vichy government or something?
Ooh, there you go.
I don't know. I was wondering. I was like, he seems like he has a fondness for the Nazis. But those are I watched a newer Jean-Jacques Annaud movie called Day of the Falcon.
Oh, yeah. What is that about?
It's about Arab warfare and oil rights and stuff with Mark Strong and Jeremy. Is his name Mark Strong?
Yeah, and Antonio Banderas, right?
Yes, and the dude from The Prophet, the main guy from the movie, the French movie The Prophet.
Yeah.
And it has that other has, what's his name? Riz Ahmed in it as well. And it was
Riz
okay.
Ahmed, yeah.
Not great, but it was kind of cool. It's a kind of story you don't see every day, but not a great.
Yeah.
This movie was the first movie I think that Christian Slater shot. It wasn't the first one released. That was The Legend of Billie Jean.
Right. He's in The Legend of Billie Jean. And he'd been in some TV, right?
Yes.
Or maybe
he had quite a few
TV
credits before this, but he talks about this as being his first movie he shot.
Oh, weird.
And he really liked hanging with Sean Connery, which he has many scenes with Connery. It's pretty much his whole role almost, except for some little note. And
yes.
It's interesting we're doing this episode after Nymphomaniac. This will be our child pornography 1-2 punch.
And out. Yeah, the sex stuff they pretty gloss over. Not in the movie, but in interviews. Anon. He's in the commentary, he's just like, they love each other. And we had 3 cameras and he didn't know what was coming and
oh yeah, they said that they didn't tell him. Yeah, I read that on IMDb too, that he didn't know what the girl was gonna do.
Right.
Yeah. I also the girl is Valentina Vargas, who isn't known for that much.
No.
And what I read this that they had 3 girls they were going to audition, and she was the first one. They were going to bring in the other 2 the next day, and Slater liked her so much he asked the director to cast her, and the director thought it was cute and went with that and didn't even audition the other 2 girls.
In the commentary, he goes on and on about how beautiful and sexy she is, so you wonder about
his relationship with her. She was good looking.
Yeah, sure.
Let's see here. So I guess we'll get into the plot.
Begin spoilers.
And the movie. And it does start with them riding up to the monastery. Sean Connery as William of Baskerville, which is a big nod to, he's pretty much Sherlock Holmes in this movie.
Pretty much Sherlock Holmes. I'm sure that's Echo's.
It is. In fact, there are
a
couple of nods here. Echo is very good about putting in I read the book, and he was very good about putting in who he was ripping off, because another prime figure in the movie is Jorge, Father Jorge. And the 2 big influences on this novel I see are Arthur Conan Doyle with, of course, the Baskerville, and Jorge Luis Borges with the Labyrinth. And the novel starts off with a preface by Umberto Eco talking about how this is like some lost book by Adso that he found, and is maybe like he went to different places looking for, and all this very Borges stuff about a fake book that might be real and stuff. And there are other sequences too that seem to call on the Book of Imaginary Beings by Borges and somebody else. But yeah, there is a lot in the book, especially about that calls to mind Jorge Luis Borges. Then, of course, there's also a Father Umberto named after himself in the movie.
Right. And is that in the book as well?
It is.
And not, interesting.
Who will be Ubertino. Ubertino is played by William Hickey, who would be post-Oscar on this.
For Prizzi's Honor?
Yeah.
Rob? Yeah. Well, and supposedly the blind priest or blind monk was originally supposed to be John Huston.
Oh, yes, I read that. Which would have really, they would have had to get bigger actors for all the monk parts. We'll get into why. But the guy who plays Father Jorge is Fedor Chalapin Jr., who is in a movie called Emmanuel Black Velvet that I did not watch. He was in Fellini's Roma, and he was in a movie called The Inner Circle about Russia that starred Tom Hulce and Bob Hoskins, who was in Enemy at the Gates, where it's about Tom Hulce plays a movie projectionist who works for Stalin. It's a very kind of anti-communist film made by Andrei Konchalovsky, the guy that directed Runaway Train and Tango and Cash.
Oh, whoa.
Let's see. So they ride up to the monastery. Adso, who is Christian Slater, who is the novice assistant to William von Baskerville, who is his mentor guy, and he's kind of our Watson in this movie. And in the book, this is a little different. They ride up and they immediately meet the Cellar, who is looking for the abbot's lost horse, and Connery Baskerville comes up with inductive reasoning from things he knows of all these things and tells him the name of the horse, where to find the horse, what color the horse, all this stuff about the horse. And it just blows Remedio, the Cellar's mind, and Adso, who is played by Christian Slater in the movie. Oh, and we get an and credit for Slater here. And the movie starts off with narration by, I believe, an actor named Jack Wiest, who has just narrated tons of stuff. He will be the narrating voice of Adso. So Slater, as an old man, is talking about this. And the movie takes place in 1327 during the height of during the Spanish Inquisition. And
that's funny because in the movie, the first inclination that we get that he's a deductor or any kind of a smarter mind is when Christian Slater needs to go to the bathroom and tells him where the bathroom is.
That's right. Yes, I saw a man running in. He walked out quite leisurely.
That's hilarious. Who walks out with contempt?
And then, but in the movie, then they ride up, and then they meet a group of monks at the gate who are all wacky looking. So many wacky faces in this movie.
Yeah, a lot of ugly Europeans.
Yes. And they enter the abbey, and we see Severinus the herbalist in his garden working. Severinus is played by an actor who you see in tons of stuff. He's not famous. He's a classic, like, oh, there's that guy kind of guy.
It's Elias or Elias? Elsa.
Yeah, Elliot Baskin.
Elliot Baskin. He's in a movie I just rewatched, 2010, The Year We Make Contact.
Oh, by another filmmaker whom Connery would work with in the early and later 80s, Peter Hyams.
That's right, Peter Hyams.
We skipped both Presidio and Outland.
I like Outland. I like Outland quite a bit. I don't like Presidio very much.
I'm with you on both things. I've seen Outland pretty recently, so I didn't rewatch it, but I'd never really watched the Presidio, so I watched it. And I was thinking maybe we'd have won Vietnam if all our soldiers weren't around 50 years old when it happened. Like Jack Warden won the Medal of Honor for it.
Yeah.
And I thought it was in bad taste that one of the villains in the Presidio looked like Joe Montana.
I don't remember.
Because the movie was shot in San Francisco, and I may have been a few cosmos deep when I made that note.
I give it props for at least shooting in San Francisco and not like shooting in LA saying it's San Francisco.
Oh, and in Highlander, they make a police sketch of the villain at some point. The guy, Clancy Brown.
Clancy Brown.
And the police sketch on the papers, it looks a lot like O.J. Simpson.
That's pretty good. That's good.
So we see Severinus, the herbalist, working in his garden. And then we also see the librarian Malachi and the abbot, der Abbot, looking down from a window in the abbey and talking about whether or not to tell them something.
Right, Michael Lonsdale.
Yes. Oh, yes. Michael Lonsdale is the abbot.
Another Bond connection.
The villain from Moonraker. And the hero from Day of the Jackal. I watched a crazy movie with he was barely in it, but it starred Gregory Peck and Anthony Quinn and Omar Sharif called Behold a Pale Horse.
Whoa. And
it was called Behold a Pale Horse, but the whole movie was so underexposed, it was almost unwatchable. It was crazy. It was poor cinematography. It was hard to get into.
Crazy.
And they decide not to tell him. The abbot is afraid he'll go looking in wrong places if he's not told. They're talking about William, whether or not to tell William something. And then the librarian says he doubts his ability to find out anything, saying he's not as good as the Inquisition. And then they consult the blind monk, whom we meet, Jorge, an old blind man, who says he's going to stay out of it. And we cut from that to William and Adsel in their cell. They're going to stay in their little room in the monastery. And this is where you have Adsel looking at the water and pacing about, and Connery telling him that he needs to, all the inductive reasoning about where a bathroom can be found. But before that, he says that if you're going to master nature, you need to observe its rules or something like that.
Yes.
Which is a quote by Francis Bacon, who would not be born for like 200 years after this takes place. But in the book, his character is a big fan of Roger Bacon, who I guess was a religious monk who was into technology and stuff. This is a big theme in the book about hidden knowledge. In the movie as well, but more so in the book, about whether or not everything is already perfect and machines are from the devil. And Connery believes that God has seen all the machines that will be and approves of them and things if they're put to good use, and talks to Adso about someday there will be maybe even be flying machines. A man in Venice has conceived of one, although that wouldn't have happened yet either, I don't think.
Right.
Maybe it would have. I'm not getting sketchy there. Okay. So he tells him
we haven't. No. We're still medieval. We haven't reached the Renaissance. This is a big point of contention with when they first meet William Hickey, which I think you're about to get to actually.
Yes.
Is the statue of Mary, which is a Renaissance statue and not a medieval role.
I see. Also here, though, William of Baskerville looks out the window and sees a fresh grave. And he pulls out machines and then hides them when the abbot arrives. The abbot is Benedictine. William is a Franciscan. And he's not there to investigate anything. He's there for part of a big religious debate about poverty in the church and poverty of the church. And there are other Franciscans they're expecting. And Ubertino is a Franciscan who's already there, who's William Hickey. And then the abbot leaves wishing them peace. Then Connery gives him a Columbo and is like, just one more thing.
That's right.
And he's like, what about that grave? And he's like, oh, an illuminator has died by accident named Adelmo. And Connery had heard of this Adelmo because he knows his comic images he had illuminated. And so they're quite famous.
Right.
And the abbot starts to take Connery into his confidence about unease surrounding Adelmo's death. Slater comes in, and this is where we learn he's Connery's novice. And then Michael Lonsdale keeps talking because as his novice, it's okay, I guess, for him to hear stuff. And he says William was an inquisitor, so he asks him to investigate this the death of fall from the window. And because unless the abbot can put people at ease about it, he'll have to summon the head of the Inquisition to come.
Right.
And they go from this to meeting Ubertino in the chapel, and he is old and wacky, and he comes on to Christian Slater.
Yeah, one of the many. Well, even at this point, you've seen some of the homosexual underlyings of the movie. Yeah,
I think this is maybe the first one I picked up on.
Well, when any of them meet and they kiss. It's often awkward and
you're right. I just took that as Euro stuff, but you're right.
But it's always at a strange angle, and it's always on the lips, and they always take their time. It's very awkward.
Yeah, Ubertino is against women, but there's an interesting thing in the push and pull in the book where he's really against women, but he's really for this woman who was like religious, but many think was evil and stuff or something. I forget. But anyway, he kind of comes on to Christian Slater, and then he talks about Adelmo and says there was something feminine and diabolical about Adelmo too.
Right, which becomes a underlying theme throughout. Just everyone watching Christian Slater like at dinner and other things.
Yes. So we see, then they leave Umberto, and Umbertino's really into like prophecy and stuff. And we see the Cellar for the first time, Remedio, who is played by a guy who I don't know if I'd ever seen him in anything else, named Helmut Qualtinger.
Might also be his last movie.
Oh. Yeah, a lot of stuff he was in, almost everything looked like it was all foreign.
Yeah.
And he trades with the peasants for their stuff for their kitchen. And then Connery's looking around the grounds, and he thinks that the body might have rolled to where they found it under the window from somewhere else. And I think we left out that the reason they think that there's something odd about the thing is that the windows couldn't be opened that he jumped from.
Right.
That's right.
And then they discover the blood and how the slope of based on where they're like feeding the peasants out of the strange gate door that rolls downhill.
And Slater sees the peasant girl for the first time.
That's right. The one woman in the whole movie.
Yes. And
adds to the homosexuality of it all.
And Connery determines it's suicide because of all these things. And Slater asks him how he knows it wasn't murder. And he's like, oh, it's elementary. And Malachi looks on. And then we go to what you're talking about, where they have the prayer before their big meal and all the monks are gathered. And I was thinking Klaus Kinski should have been in this.
It's actually amazing that Klaus wasn't in this, or that it wasn't a Herzog film, actually.
I was thinking about something with F. Murray Abraham coming in, also just after his Oscar. I thought this might have been a better movie if Milos Forman had made it. I don't know how you feel about Milos Forman.
I don't like Milos. Frankly.
So I kind of do. And I kind of felt like the theme of this movie, that it's about like the evils of if you cover up knowledge and keep knowledge hidden, that it makes for a bad time for people, is right up his alley. It's kind of the theme of he's a really anti-communist kind of guy. And
that's interesting.
And
sure.
So the People versus Larry Flint would cover this material more or less. And yeah, I do like Milos Forman. I don't like all of his movies, but I like Amadeus, and I like Cuckoo's Nest, and I like People versus Larry Flint.
I like Flint. And I don't really like the other two. I like things about Amadeus, and I don't like Cuckoo's Nest.
So I think those movies are a lot of fun.
Which is interesting.
I also like what's that one? The Fireman's Ball. Not that big on Loves of a Blonde.
That's interesting. I've never seen Fireman's Ball.
It's kind of fun. It's a very anti-communist satire movie.
Right.
Let's see. So
that's interesting. I wonder what he would have been doing at this time. They also bought up Echo's book, the rights to his book, like super early, because it's only a few years old by this point, and then got offered like millions of dollars after it was already a success.
So it became a big.
Didn't give it up.
It was a fun book. It started off. It's slow. And it started off really slow, but as it started getting rolling along, I enjoyed it. See, you're right. This is where Berengar, who we'll find out is the assistant librarian, very creepy actor. Who is this guy? It was a guy named Michael Habek, whom I don't know if I recognize from anything. He looks like he's in a lot of French movies. He was in an old version of The Bourne Identity from the 80s.
Whoa.
That's strange.
That is strange.
But yeah, he plays Berengar, who's bald and creepy looking, very Uncle Fester.
Was he playing Joan Allen's character from Bourne Identity?
Is she in the first one?
I don't know.
I can't remember.
Isn't she?
Maybe.
I cannot. I've only seen one of them, so.
Oh, well then, yeah, she probably was, because I would imagine you probably saw the first one. I liked the first one. See, yeah, so we see Berengar checking Slater out, and then we also see Vanashus, who is the Illuminator of Greek, who is played by Urs Alfhaus, who I didn't recognize at all. And I guess he's supposed to be black. He is dark-skinned, but it looks like, I don't know, I did not read him as being a black guy. I think that Connery calls him the Black Monk later. But he's like a younger, more virile. He's not as ugly as like all the other people we see in the movie.
Right, he's another fair-skinned one of sorts.
And let's see, so yeah, then we see kind of Berengar checking out Vanashus, it almost seems like, or maybe Vanashus is checking out Slater too. And then Jorge does this knocking to go with the reading, kind of to call everybody to attention, and seems to look at Vanashus, even though he is blind.
Is he calling to attention, or is he just, I always thought that he was just confirming the reading that's going on during all of this about how laughter is a beast.
Oh, you're right. The laughter is a beast. I think he's kind of doing both. Like he is doing a kind of thing, like maybe that's the thing he would regularly do, because maybe he feels like people routinely don't pay enough attention to the reading, but especially tonight's reading, right? About the laughter.
Yeah.
Because then we cut from that to night, and it's nighttime, and William and Adso are in their cell, and then we cut to around the monastery. We see Vanashus reading to Jorge, and he laughs at something he reads. And then we see Berengar in his cell whipping himself, and then we see the Cellar, a cloaked figure, leaving the monastery, looking sinister. Then morning comes, and everybody has to sing together and do the chanting. And Berengar is weeping while he's singing. And the Cellar has to be awoken from snoring because he's been out all night. And they have wakers. That's kind of a cute thing at these things, that there are certain people whose job is just waking people who fall asleep during these early things. Then there's a disturbance, and they go and they find Vanashus in the kitchen or in a vat of blood, upside down, dead.
Right. You skipped out.
Oh.
Yeah, there's a whole sequence earlier in the movie where they're slaughtering some pigs and draining them of blood.
That's blood all goes in this big vat.
The vat of blood.
Yeah, and there's a body upside down in it that turns out to be the handsome Vanashus, who was laughing. The last guy we saw him with alive was Jorge. William rules out suicide on this one.
Do we see him with Jorge in that scene?
Yeah, I rewound it because it was confusing to me. Because you see him reading and laughing, and then it like moves, and it's clear he's there with Jorge. Unless I'm incredibly mistaken, he's definitely just hanging with Jorge, laughing, which I didn't understand at all. Even now, I'm confused about it. But because I was like, wait, are they in two different places, and we're just seeing where people are? And I was like, no, they're together.
Interesting.
If I'm wrong, somebody please point it out, but I'm pretty sure. So
that's interesting. That changes things quite a bit.
So William decides this one could not be a suicide. And Ubertino quotes Revelation and freaks everyone out about various trumpets and light and stuff. And everybody's like, ooh, and it scares everyone. Then we hang out with the herbalist, who's also the undertaker. And William finds out the herbalist keeps things like arsenic and various poisons, but as medicines, because in small doses they might be quite helpful. And he also finds out from him that Vanashus and Adelmo, the two dead men, now were very close, though he insists they were not lovers. movies.
Yes.
So then we have Slater exploring.
That's another one of those conversations of what goes on in a monastery is not always necessary. I wish I had a decanter up here. Where did we leave off?
Okay.
Here. Where did we leave off?
You were talking about he was at the Herbalist.
Right.
And they were looking who keeps various poisons and things around because they're good. And there were the homosexual things. We find out that things may be afoot at this monastery.
Right.
You were saying you remember Elliot Baskin from 2010. I forgot. I remember him most from, he's in tons of stuff, often as a Russian, but he plays the Russian janitor in my favorite episode of the Larry Sanders Show. Have you ever watched that?
Yes.
Yeah, there's one where Rip Torn gets really drunk and mad at Larry and just hangs out with this Russian janitor all night, and they drink scotch and bond, and then in the end, Rip Torn fires him. And I really like that. That's probably my favorite episode.
I don't remember that. He's in a good episode of Wrestling, where he's like a delegate from the Baltic and an Eastern European country that's looking to create a constitution, and they're meeting in like one of the boardrooms in the West Wing, and it's their liaison or our constitutional scholar is Christopher Lloyd, who's helping them through the process. It's pretty.
You're gone. He was also in a movie called Forest Warrior that stars Chuck Norris and is directed by Chuck Norris's son, and is very, very like so bad it's good. I think Mr. T might be in it as well. If I can't remember, as like a forest spirit or something, or maybe Chuck Norris is a forest spirit in it. I can't remember. They're talking to the herbalist, and then we get a part where Slater explores alone. He sees a bunch of creepy freezes, and then he meets Salvatore by Ron Perlman, who is a crazy, monstrous figure.
Right, he's a hunchback.
Yes, and he talks like he does in the book, where it's like he knows snatches of a bunch of different languages, and he's a grotesque, and he just speaks in kind of a semi-decipherable. You kind of know what he means, but he's speaking in a lot of weirdness. Did you enjoy Ron Perlman in this movie? Did you enjoy the character of Salvatore?
Yes, yeah, I have no problems with Salvatore. He's it's funny because they describe the monastery as like the universe. It's funny because I feel like they portray the monasteries as like the special needs schools of their time. Because none of I
feel like you're going to cut out. I think you're a net or something.
There you are. Yeah, all of their casting choices seem like they're so interesting and ugly and especially in some of the scenes where they find him in the vat of blood, and when they're not to skip ahead, but it always seems like they're
you're gonna cut out again, I bet.
They're always amused, overly I don't know.
Yeah, there's a weird I feel like there's a lot of overacting going on in the movie or something. But I guess the idea is that this monastery maybe takes in people from all walks of life and doesn't ask too many questions. And that's maybe why your comment that it seems kind of like a special needs school makes a lot of sense. But so William shows up and kind of saves Christian Slater from Salvatore for being frightened by Salvatore, and talks to him. Right. And Salvatore says something about penitenziare as part of an apology or something. Penitenziare. Right. And William Baskerville latches on to this phrase. And then when he leaves off talking to Salvatore, Adso asks him about it. And he says that was a phrase used by a group called the Dulcinites.
Right.
And that the Dulcinites were these people that I don't know if we really get that much into it in the movie, but a lot of the book is about this, is that there are these people called the Dulcinites, and they were followed a friar named Father Dulcina, and he was into murdering rich people and dispersing their stuff to the poor. They were a group of Franciscan monks who were all about murdering and looting, and they got into a lot of sex and free love too.
Well, and aside from the sex and free love, that becomes more of what we're getting to in the debates. between the Franciscans and the Benedictines is the need for money and luxuries.
Yes, this was in the time of Pope John was the 12th or the 7th? And it was part of the Avignon papacy, and there's a real hatred for this Pope John guy. He was like, this is when the Vatican was not in Italy. It was in France, and they were under the protection of King Louis IV.
Right.
But still, like, I guess that the Pope said that the church should have a big say in like political matters and stuff still. And there was this idea that Pope John was just all about getting money. That's all he cared about, was getting money and property for the church and money. And they were putting a lot of people to torture and stuff in these days.
Right.
And we'll get into this, but Bernardo Gui was a real guy, and the guy the Franciscans are going to have talk for them is a guy named Michael of Cesena, and he was a real guy. And we find out, then we see that Salvatore and the Cellar are together. They're buddies, and this is where William finds the footprints in the snow of the murder and does more investigating with these footprints. And the shoe has a very distinctive mark, or we think. I mean, I don't know if we know at this point that not everybody's shoe looks like that, or at any point.
We never see anybody else's shoe.
Yes.
It's not. This is not Star Trek 6, and we go around looking over everybody's shoe.
Wait, is that the one with Christian Slater in it?
It's also the one with Christian Slater. That's true. The Undiscovered Country, where they talk about, yes, they're looking around for the anti-gravity boots. When they finally find them.
I also like Goya's Ghosts by Milos Forman. That's kind of an underrated movie.
Movie I need to take a look at again. Looking at this movie and doing some Spanish Inquisition research made me want to look at Goya's Ghost again.
Did you have you seen the new Dune yet?
No. I don't know that I want to.
Okay, I won't give you spoilers on that.
No, go ahead. It's free on Max. I
was just going to ask you about actors and that, because it reminded me of Stellan Skarsgård's in Goya's Ghosts and is the new Baron Harkonnen.
Yeah.
So now they go to the scriptorium and they talk to Malachi, the librarian, about checking out the workstations of the two dead monks, Vanashus and Adelmo. Connery busts out his glasses, which creeps people out. They've never seen glasses before at this point. And people laugh at Berenger being scared by a mouse. Then Jorge comes in and he's pissed at everybody for laughing. And this is where we get our big debate about whether laughter is satanic or divine.
Right.
And William mentions that Aristotle devoted his entire second book of Poetics to comedy. And then Jorge's like, have you read this? And he's like, no, it's been lost for centuries. And Jorge says it was never written. And Berenger tries to cover up something on Vanashus's desk very noticeably. And they leave, and William points out that the scriptorium is very short on books, and he thinks they might be in this other tower. And then something falls on them from above, or almost does.
Yeah, it's a brick or a cinder block kind of a situation.
And Slater chases on up after whoever dropped them to try to drop this on them, and it turns out it's Salvatore.
Yeah.
And the Cellar shows up, and he insists that Salvatore is innocent of the murders. He's not the murderer. And I guess William's like, hey, we're going to not tell people about this, but you need to give us information. And then we see it's night, and the woman is stirring. She's out and about, and Berenger is reading in the scriptorium, and he's laughing. So he maybe makes a delightful face verging on laughter or something, delighted face. And then he runs when Slater and Connery enter the scriptorium at night, and they find that the library is locked. They look at the desk that Berenger covered up, and they don't find the book he covered up, but they find a tiny note written in Greek, and we know that Vanashus translated Greek, and they find that part of it was written in invisible ink with there are these coded directions.
Yeah, with lemon juice.
Yeah, and then a noise frightens them. Someone is making a noise. Someone is inside, they realize. And then when they investigate this, someone takes Sean Connery's glasses. And the
book.
Yes, and the book. They separate to find the thief, and we see that Berenger's watching them from shadows. Slater goes and searches the kitchen, and he hides in some stuff while the Cellar appears in the kitchen and leaves, and it turns out the woman was hiding with him.
Yes.
And this is where we get some very crazy stuff, wherein she and Slater have sex for a long time.
Yeah, it's a
And then we get a very and it's not like they're shot in different shot stuff. At the time of making this movie, Christian Slater is under 18. And
15, 16.
Yeah, and he gets his face mashed in a naked woman's boobs. And then he's on top of her in a sex scene where we see his ass a lot. And it could be maybe a body double, but then he stands up and we see full frontal nudity for no reason at all. Just totally gratuitous, which is definitely not a body double. And so I kind of think if he wants to sue anybody or get out of trouble whenever he's doing cocaine or beating women or anything, he should just point to this movie as evidence. And I also theorize this is in the movie because Jean-Jacques Annaud is a depraved, filthy Euro trash, and that in the 80s, before people today, they can just find pornography anywhere. I really feel like there was a lot of sneaking of both hetero and homosexual pornography into the films. There used to be a rumor that so many guys showed their asses in movies because gay dudes would rent it on video, and I would say this is maybe a prime example of that. Not sure why we needed to see Christian Slater naked at all or anyone, but we did need to know that they made love. That's a big part of the story because now he loves this woman. William finds Salvatore outside catching rats in the graveyard. Salvatore tells William that the steps, the way the parchment is stepped have passed through various hands. This parchment, I guess, of directions, not the book. Is he talking about the book or the parchment of directions that we found, the code of directions that William has?
I don't know.
It's a good question. He says, that it's kind of confusing.
How does he know either one?
I'm not sure because he's always out chilling at night. I'm not sure we find out the whole thing that goes on in this movie of how anybody knows anything, but it's more spelled out in the book that later on we find out that the Cellar is basically a whore master and brings prostitutes and stuff for the monks and is working with Malachi in some way, and Berenger was in on it. Berenger and Vanashus had something going on. Berenger was jealous about Vanashus and adelmo, and they get sent off in a couple of weird directions. And also, Ubertino's thing about the prophecy in the movie, it's always regarded as hogwash by Sean Connery, but in the book, much like in Jorge Luis Borges's what's the one about the labyrinth and the detective, Death in the Compass? It's the killer uses Sean Connery buying into this theory after things just natural, by accident, things conform to this prophecy from Revelation. Connery starts to think the killer is using that to plan his killings and gets into it. And then it turns out that the killer in the end heard Sean Connery getting into it and used that against him, much like in that story the killer does.
Interesting.
So we find out, he tells them these different guys have had this parchment and that all these people, the two guys that are dead and Berenger. And then Slater finds this huge ox heart and thinks it's another killing. But then Connery loves to call Slater an idiot.
Calls him boy.
Yeah, but someone's like, you turnip, or something like that. He calls him a lot of stuff like that throughout.
Yeah, this is the part where he's most belligerent to him. Maybe the most in the movie when you think about it. Probably because he knows he's just had sex. And he's
kind of mad
it's
at
something
him.
It's the one thing in of all of the experiences that we now learn that Connery never has.
Yeah, we find out pretty soon that Connery's a virgin. Yeah, which is pretty cool. But Connery explains that the girl came to bring this is an ox heart that she's come to trade, or is maybe being given to her as payment for sex by a much uglier person that she wouldn't have sex with for free. And throughout though, he does several times call Christian Slater names and things. And also in this movie, I just thought it was funny just how plucky Sean Connery's performance is. He's very upbeat throughout all this murders and stuff.
Oh, yes. What is it Slater says early on in the movie is that he says something that the place gives him the creeps. And I think Connery rebukes that and rebukes that and says that, he finds it very stimulating.
Yeah, Slater and them are back in their cell, and Slater talks about love, and Connery talks about how his love is for all of these, like, writers that are dead, and then that's where we find out Sean Connery's a virgin, but also that, well, he does consider what Slater did a sin. It's not the biggest sin in the world. It's pretty human. And then the other Franciscans arrive for the conference the next day, and then William goes looking for Berenger, who he thinks has taken his glasses, but instead they find Malachi, and they ask to see the library, and Malachi says the abbot has ordered no one in the library except for the library and his assistant. They find books for everyone, and no one knows where the books are kept except for the librarian and his assistant. And Slater suspects that Berenger might be dead as the next phase of the prophecy because he's missing. And Ubertino is all about the devil being involved. Then they talk of how they suspect the Pope is out to crush the Franciscans because of their insistence on poverty. And then we find out that the herbalist has discovered the body of Berenger in the baths. And also, Sean Connery glasses are there. And the shoe. No missing book, though.
Yeah.
And we learn that Berenger was left-handed, I forget how, but he has a black stain on his left finger and a black stain on his tongue.
Oh, and maybe it's too early to ask this, what is the black stain on the tongue? Is this because they
lick their fingers turning pages?
See, later on...
I'm not sure that's ever explained in the movie why his tongue is black.
I don't think it is.
It is in the book. It's something it's got to be. They have to have explained it and cut it, or otherwise, why even make his tongue black? But yeah, it's a thing they used to throw you off the path with the early murders in the first one, because also Vanashus' tongue is black as well, which I don't know if they even say.
And the blind guy's tongue is black at the end, or his lips are black, but I think that's because he was eating pages.
Yeah, he just starts eating the book. Yeah, he's tearing up the book so no one will ever find the book.
That's interesting.
Yeah, which gives a spoiler, Jorge is the killer. And so, yeah, but William shows the abbot Vanashus' notes and points out that the script changes at the end. It starts to trail off all crazy at the point where Vanashus started dying. And what they figure out, they think, is that, like...
classic Monty Python fashion.
Yes. He believes the parchment or this book is killing the people with a poison on it. And he also believes the mystery revolves around secret books of possibly spiritually devastating material being procured by Berenger for adelmo because Berenger liked boys and they made some kind of trade, sex for the book. And then adelmo was so racked with guilt that he was seen by Salvatore giving the parchment on where to find it to Vanashus, then killing himself. And then Vanashus the next day found the book using the directions mentioned on the parchment. Yeah, it was the parchment he's talking about passing hand to hand, not the book. Because then then Vanashus the next day found the book mentioned on the parchment, started reading it, wrote notes, then died with the black stain from the poison on his finger. And then Berenger moved the body to divert suspicion against himself. And Berenger then at that point was curious about the book that they were reading, and he found it and did it and died. And he now begs for access. William begs for access to the library.
And doesn't get it.
No. Jorge shows up with Malachi and tells William he fails to see what is obvious to everyone. The abbot tells him to stop investigating him, tells him that Bernardo Gui, the head inquisitor, is coming with the papal delegation to take over the investigation. Then he burns the coded parchment. And Connery tells some friars that Ubertino must be moved to a place of safety. And does the movie explain to you why they need to move Ubertino?
I don't think so.
It's a big scene in a minute where William Hickey leaves. Also, what else aside from Prizzi's Honor do you remember William Hickey from?
Oh gosh, Christmas Vacation.
Oh yes, that's of course he's very famous for Christmas Vacation.
And the Billy Crystal movie, Forget Paris.
Oh, I don't remember that movie that well. I remember him a lot from A Small Role in My Blue Heaven, where he's another witness protection program mobster. And I also remember him from a movie I saw pretty recently where he played Peter Fonda's dad in a movie called 92 in the Shade.
Oh, I know of the movie, but I've never seen it.
It's about violently competitive fishermen, fishing guides in the Everglades with, Peter Fonda and Warren Oates and Harry Dean Stanton, and then Burgess Meredith and William Hickey. And it seems like, just a movie made by people on drugs or some just kind of like strange movie. late 70s movie. But I guess the thing is that Ubertino is a big time Franciscan who also has a history of talking at these different things and has kind of the Benedictines and Father Gui and the Pope are kind of against Ubertino and will use any means necessary maybe to get him for heresy if they can, based on his past. And so with all these murders and things happening and stuff, Connery's let's get him out of here because they're going to pretty much just try to lock him up if they can. And then they say that they're more worried about what's going to happen to William, which is our first indication that maybe William and Bernardo Gui have some kind of bad history. Yeah, they worry for William if he argues with Bernardo again. Now we see that Slater goes and sees the girl in the night through some holes in some wooden shacks walls, her with her people, and he's glad that he's a Franciscan and not a Benedictine and can maybe try to help her in her poverty or something. And then he gets a peasant guy shows up and busts him peeping and laughs at him. He throws a rock at him or something. He throws something at him and Slater runs off in fear. And then the next day we get Ubertino leaving in a big barrel in the back of the thing, raving madly about the prophecy and still creeping on Christian Slater.
Yeah.
In the book, Ubertino the book was kinder to him. He definitely was creeping on Christian Slater in the book. But then at the end, when he says goodbye to him and stuff, the narrator, Adso, says that he was no longer like he was before, looking at me that way. He was looking at me more like my grandfather and something. And you kind of realize, Ubertino kind of has his day in court where he's not found to be so evil. And he's not such a, since Sean Connery buys into the prophecy, he's not looked at as such an idiot either.
Yeah.
It's kind of more of a mixed bag. The book is maybe fair to some characters and not as fair to others. You'll find out that one character they found much more villainous.
Do you like the voiceover, the narration in the movie?
Not really.
Yeah.
I feel like it's done a lot for plot purposes to understand what the hell's even going on. But
it's so loose, though. It doesn't seem to.
No.
It's very strange.
Wiest.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's any relation to Diane Wiest. Probably not.
Probably not.
So here's where they find the secret door button to the library that opens up the pulpit
the
or
altar.
Something. The altar,
Yeah.
Makes it slide back. There's they push in the eyes of a skull. Then they find lots more skulls in this dark cavernous hall. And they follow a rat to the hidden library.
That's right.
And this is one of the funny parts of Connery where he's whooping in the library all crazy. He's so excited to find all these books.
He's very excited.
And he says these books are being hidden because they're feared it's feared that they will create doubt, and doubt is the enemy of faith. Which I'm not sure if that's ever contradicted in the movie, but in the book he definitely says doubt is actually good. It's not really the enemy of faith. And then Slater gets lost, and Connery realizes they're actually in a labyrinth. And Slater starts reading aloud on love and leaving a string behind him from his cloak, and he keeps turning left so Connery can hope to find him, and Connery does find him, and Slater gets scared of a funhouse image of himself, which Connery really realizes this is used to scare people, so they must be getting somewhere good. Connery reveals he kept a copy of the parchment. He did not really give it to the abbot. He gave him a copy, or he made a copy first, and it contains what he realizes that the coded directions are really for the labyrinth. And he's so how do we get out of it? So how do we get out is what Christian Slater says. And he's if I always had the answers, I'd be teaching theology in Paris. It's do we get, is this a joke we have the means to even get?
Yeah.
So I guess theology teachers in Paris think they know everything, which I think is kind of explained in the book afterwards. They do qualify the joke. They're okay, there's a school in Paris where these guys do this stuff. But in the movie, they just leave it at that.
Yeah.
And now we get the arrival of F. Murray Abraham, and a big day for he and Father Jorge with their contact lenses. What'd you think of F. Murray Abraham's eyes?
You know what? I wasn't looking that closely, I don't think. I was just constantly, I had already read that Abraham was a pain in the ass during all of this. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, supposedly he was quick to constantly point out that he had just won the Oscar for Amadeus, and that Connery did not have an Oscar. And apparently on his days, he insisted that he arrive first before Connery.
Interesting.
So Connery was constantly early, and F. Murray Abraham was constantly late, but Connery couldn't come to set before him.
Weird.
Yeah, apparently he was a huge dick.
Weird. Yeah, he is sort of the second, biggest star in the movie. Not today. Christian Slater would be bigger than F. Murray Abraham, but at the time, he is, really the only other star in the movie.
I guess that's true. Yeah.
And this really... After this, though, it's like F. Murray Abraham drops off a map.
Yeah, 100%.
It's like maybe he was such a dick in this, no one hired him again or something. I don't know. But it's like, yeah, his career is weird in that he was like a character actor on a bunch of TV shows. Then he had a character role in Scarface, and then he was in Amadeus. And it's like, I guess maybe had he done the part on Broadway or something. I know Nigel Hawthorne was really associated with that role of
Salieri.
Yeah. And then maybe turned down the movie. Or maybe they never offered him the movie. I don't know. But maybe F. Murray Abraham did it on Broadway or something. I'm not sure how F. Murray Abraham, comes from almost nowhere to win an Oscar and then does this and pretty much disappears back into just being a character actor.
Yeah, who knows?
So after this, Slater and Connery are still in the labyrinth when Bernardo Gui shows up. And Slater shows Connery the string he's been leaving behind, and Connery's pleased with him for once. Then the instruments of torture arrive. Salvatore is dealing with this girl, and he's working on some kind of spell or hex or something with eggs and spit that he needs her saliva. And he asks her to spit on the eggs. She's just spitting in his face. Then he thanks her and wipes it off. More grotesquerie. Then we've had child abuse in the movie. Now we get cat abuse with this black cat. We also get girl abuse by being licked by Ron Perlman.
So is F. Murray Abraham's character not in the book?
He is.
Oh, he is.
Yeah, it's pretty much like this. He shows up and becomes the villain for a while.
Oh, interesting.
Why do you think he might not be?
Oh, I got the impression from something that I read that it wasn't that, because I know that the burning of the stake later is not in the book.
No,
right?
That is not in the book. What happens? We'll get to it. It's darker.
Oh, damn.
Even though it doesn't occur. So Perlman and the girl get caught by the Swiss guard. And I noted that Sean Connery becomes less plucky in the movie once F. Murray Abraham arrives. Maybe that's because he was such a dick.
Yes.
So,
well, yeah.
And I thought it was because of the plot, but now I think maybe he just didn't like F. Murray Abraham. So maybe what F. Murray Abraham did was working for the movie because they were supposed to be enemies.
Right. And he's also a little afraid of him.
Yeah, you're
after
right.
everything that's happened.
So Gui we find out that Gui and William have no love lost between them. Gui, when he says that he's found evil, he looks right at William. And William doesn't stick up for the girl or the cat or Salvatore and say they're not satanic heretics. And back in their cell, Slater curses Connery for a coward. And Connery gives us his backstory, which is that he was an inquisitor with Gui, and Gui convicted a guy and wanted to burn him, and Connery stuck up for the guy, and then Gui had Connery put under arrest for heresy or something unless he recanted, and he ended up, to save his own life, he let them burn that guy.
Yeah.
It's pretty dark.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, so then we see that Salvatore is getting tortured, and then the Pope's envoys arrive, the Benedictines or whatever, and which I guess I thought Bernardo Gui was part of that, but no, those guys arrived the next day.
Yeah, that's also kind of a little bit, because those guys were coming anyway, so obviously Lonsdale and them sent for Gui.
Yeah, I guess so.
And that's a little, but at what point that happens.
And that's different in the that's different in the book, because in the book, he really wants William to solve it, so he says, so that he does not want Gui to show up, and he doesn't want, because it's going to be a question. The abbot being afraid his authority is going to be usurped and taken away is a big theme in the book. In fact, Michael Lonsdale's character ends up being quite villainous. He's been trying to cover up this knowledge. He maybe got his abbotship at a weird age, and when it should have been somebody else, and there are all kinds of backroom politics, and he doesn't want all this unraveled. He and Jorge and Malachi are all kind of conspirators in something that went way back, and they're all kind of in it together, and Jorge is maybe secretly running the whole abbey, especially the library. And even though he's not really allowed to because he's blind or something, we also find out that Malachi is basically illiterate, and that's why he never dies from this poison until way later, until coming up when he can no longer finally contain his curiosity. It's like he's not interested in books. He's basically a puppet librarian for Malachi.
Oh, interesting.
Or not for Malachi, but for Father Jorge.
Right.
And that Father Jorge was briefly like, we find out William does investigation and figures out that there was like briefly some guy that made all these notes, and then it changed to another guy. And he's like, who was this guy? And it turns out to be Jorge before he went blind, looking at all these past notes of like when books were entered. And let's see. So yeah, we had all this stuff with the Pope and Louis the Fourth stuff ends up like kind of coming to a head a generation or two later in the Western Schism of 1378 and stuff. Yeah, and then it was Pope John the 11th is this Pope, or John the 12th rather, John the 12th, and Michael Cécile is talking on behalf of the friars of the Franciscan order, and I don't know who the guy is that looks very evil. That is the Pope's main emissary.
Oh, yeah, I have no idea.
When they're having the debate, and really, the reason William's there is he's supposed to be one of the speakers at this debate.
So I don't think he ever does.
No, I don't think so either. Well, it ends up breaking down maybe before it's ever his turn to speak, maybe, because they just end up shouting at each other a bunch. But then the herbalist runs up to the window and distracts William and says he's found the Greek book among his jars, and William tells him to go back. In the book, he kind of runs up and tells him to go back and like lock himself in the herbarium.
Oh, I think he does that in the movie too.
Okay, good. Yeah, because he's afraid he'll get killed for knowing where it is.
Yeah. And
then the herbalist comes back to his lab, and it's in disarray. Everything's been turned upside down, and then someone clubs him to death with an armillary spear.
Yeah.
Which they initially in the book actually like thinks might have something to do with like what's going on, but it turns out it's just the handiest heavy thing. Yeah, then Remedio the Cellar is outside. He learns from Malachi that Salvatore has confessed, and Malachi tells the Cellar to run away. And because the Cellar was also maybe supplying whores for Malachi and stuff too. They were kind of in something together as well. And so Malachi owes him something, which we don't know in the movie, but we know in the book. And Malachi at this point wipes blood from his shoe. So we get the feeling he knows something of this murder. And then we see the debaters shouting at each other, and Bernardo Gui interrupts them to tell them there's been this crazy thing happen, and they bust the Cellar and accuse him of the murder and of heresies. They said that they were already going to arrest him for the heresies, or F. Murray Abraham tells him, but now they've got him for murder as well. And William goes and examines the crime scene, and he finds the black glove, and then he gets his blame for the murders happening by not doing a good job of investigating, looking down wrong paths, saying that he could have prevented several deaths, or a few at this point. And then Gui calls in the abbot and William as judges in the trial of Remedio and the woman and Salvatore. And when the woman and Salvatore are brought in, and Salvatore appears to be holding a prop hand. He's been heavily tortured, and I guess they're saying his wrist is broken.
Right, his wrist, yes.
He looks pretty wacky. And he's confessed that he and Remedio were Dulcinites. And so then they asked, like, Remedio if he's a Dulcinite, or if he was a Dulcinite. Not only does he not refute it, but he says now he's proud. And he realizes after being here and eating too much and satisfying his lusts, that he should have always been a Dulcinite, and that if he had his way, he'd slaughter everyone there, or at least the papal delegation if he had the chance, for being so rich and fat. In the book, he really doesn't want to confess, and they really get it out of him. And then, Slater prays for a miracle to save the girl. But all three end up being found guilty, but though Remedio denies the Abbey murders, and then Gui's the one who finds them guilty. Then he asks the other two judges, and the abbot does not refute the verdict based on the evidence. And William refutes nothing except that the murderer cannot be Remedio, for the murderer reads Greek, and Remedio cannot. And then, because he's been disputed, Gui says that now, to find out the truth, Remedio needs to be tortured.
Yeah.
And that's when Remedio says he'll confess to anything to avoid tortures. And he's like, even that you were inspired to the murders by the devil, he's like, I was inspired by the devil. He gets really crazy. It
does, yeah. This actor died the day after they finished shooting.
Wow.
Yeah, he was not in good health through most of the shoot.
He really goes for it in these scenes.
Yeah.
He gives it his all. That might be his death rattle when he says devil. So they're all sentenced to burn at the stake. And William says, hey, you can kill these guys, but there are going to be more deaths with blackened fingers and tongues. And Guy says Connery has relapsed into his heresy. And the debate is now, this is where also the debate gets concluded. The papal people say that they have enough evidence that the Franciscans suck because the abbey shelters heretics and murderers. And so William is told he has to go to Avignon to be on trial with Pope John. And stakes get set up for burning outside the monastery. But in the book, what happens is Bernardo Guy just bombs out with the prisoners in tow, and he's going to burn them somewhere along the road. So he gets no comeuppance in the book at all, and the people get burned. They're not saved at all. And that's like maybe what some people. I'm going to ask you right now. At this point, do you have any idea why it's called the name of the rose?
No, I was going to ask you that.
I was thinking maybe it should be called the name of the Riz.
Yeah.
But I guess this is a big debate. At some point in the book, I don't know if it's even in the movie, Sean Connery talks about how we say rose, but there is no universal rose. There's just the name Rose. And they say that Umberto Eco said he just wanted to find a totally neutral title and had that line in his book and took the title from that or something. And some people think that the rose refers to lost beauties and youth of previous generations. There's also a thing in the book about like, a lot of the monks think that like things can't be what they were. We just have reflections and poor versions of them. There's a whole character cut from the movie of a glazier, and Sean Connery gets him to make a new pair of glasses for him, which ends up being really funny because he has to teach the guy about glasses and stuff, and the guy takes so much trouble and time making these glasses, and the glasses on Berenger's body turn up right before the guy shows up with glasses for him. And so Connery is like, William at Baskerville, to be nice, is like, I'll use these as my spare because these ones you've made me are much better, to be polite. And then, but anyway, yeah, there's a lot of debate about technology and knowledge and stuff. Right. And I kind of feel like this movie is maybe like a little harder on religion, a little like less hard on being against free speech and free knowledge.
Sure. Well, I mean, the movie takes a whole, even despite all the melancholy, it does have a little bit of an uplifting ending in that the villagers turn against Guy and like throw his carriage off the side.
Yeah, he
like,
gets killed.
Yeah. Which is not like the Inquisition lasted another 2 centuries.
Yeah.
I mean, there were inquisitors up until the middle of the 1800s.
Yeah. I was going to say at least into the 1700s.
Yeah, it wasn't really until Napoleon expelled them, and then with his invasion in the early 1800s.
Yeah, because there's a good book by Arturo Perez Reverte, one of those Alatriste books that's all about trying to Inquisition Jews and kill them for their money, basically.
Right. Well, and that's always the beginning of the Inquisition. It's funny we never see any movies about that. About it first being about Jews, and then being about Protestants, and then being about like it's just about anybody.
Yeah, that they can get.
Yeah, you never see that in like I don't remember that in like 1492. Like you never see any of the rise of
1492.
Well, when we do the Gerard Depardieu monitor,
right before Welcome to New York.
Well, we have to start with that one.
So then we have a thing. It's the next day, and Jorge is speaking to the monks about. Jorge gets to give this big speech about how they're all fucked up and stuff, and need to look at themselves and reform themselves. And at this, Malachi looks quite ill, and a waker goes to make sure he's awake, but then he just falls dead, and his fingers are black, as we mentioned. And then Slater and Connery run to the library door.
They evade Guy's men to do this. Because they're under arrest, aren't they? Or they're being watched.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. Because somehow they disappear. And later on, they bring up that like, hey, this guy died with the black finger just like William said he would. And Guy is like, I would too if I was a murderer. I'd know how the people were going to be murdered. Find that guy.
Right.
But they're already like down going into the library here. So
right.
What happens in the book is that the abbot goes to find out what's up in the library and kind of figures out who the killer is first, or at the same time they do. And Jorge shuts him up somewhere in one of the traps of the labyrinth, and the abbot ends up dying. And it turns like before he dies, like he really pisses off William and tries to get him to kiss. It like shows off all his riches and stuff, and power. And William, when they try to save the abbot, and William's like, we're about to go try to save a man who does not deserve it.
That's interesting, because I don't think we see Lonsdale after the trial.
No, I don't know if we do. He may, because that's the thing. When Jorge gives this big speech in the book, Lonsdale would come up first and say that he doesn't have the right to give them a speech right now after running such a shitty abbot or abbey.
Yeah.
And so then he gives sway to Jorge, and that's when like William kind of is like, man, Jorge must have some power here, because really this speaking thing, there's another character cut from the movie that's another old monk that hates Jorge and goes back a long way. And it's like things that Jorge gets to do, this other monk by rights should get to do, but instead it's Jorge. Whereas William calls him Jorge. The thing is like that the abbot has been maybe trying to keep his power and cover up all these terrible things so he doesn't lose his power, and people don't find out that he came by his power through nefarious means. And so it's kind of like he in the book kind of has these like red herrings that drop off one by one, and I think it kind of narrows down to you wonder if Malachi is behind it all or the abbot or Jorge, and then you find out it's not Malachi because he dies, and then you find out it's not the abbot right at the end because they go to save him. And that's when you realize it's Jorge. Jorge hears of Malachi's death in this thing while he's giving a speech, and he gets sad because he and Malachi were big time cohorts, and which I don't think you find out in the movie. Yeah, this is where Gui accuses William of being the real murderer because he foretold the death and orders his capture. And then let's see. So the abbot went to go investigate, but that's not in the movie. And then also this is the part in the book where the Adso has a vision of something called the Sana Cipriani. Mm-hmm. And this is Sana Cipriani is a work from the 4th century that is a parody of the Bible. And it's a prose work all about a party or like a wedding feast thrown by God or something. And all these figures from the Bible show up and do like sometimes obscene things. And it's kind of like another like comedic work or something. And Adso has a dream about it. And somehow this gives William a big clue that is about the secret to the labyrinth and where to find Jorge has something to do with, there's something about this like African section, and there's the number 4, and he realizes that it's numerology, and that they're not looking for a 4-letter word, they're looking for the 4th letter in a word or something. I can't exactly remember, but they don't deal with any of this in the movie. They set the stakes up, or they put the stakes to fire, or just fire arrives to set the stakes up. This is where they find Jorge back in the library in a little office or something, and William has ascertained that the killer book is indeed Aristotle's second book of Poetics, the one on comedy. And he reads a little bit from the book, but wearing this glove to protect him from the poison, the black glove he found at the herbalist. And Jorge he's like, if the light is too dim for you, get your young novice to read it. And he's like, oh, you want him touching it too. So he's trying to get Slater killed. And the book writes a long little passage of Aristotle's second book. It makes up part of an Aristotle book. And that's better than it's aping a Borges. He does a really good job of aping the way the first book of Poetics is written, if you've ever read that. Like, he does a really good job with this second book making up what Aristotle might write it like. I thought it was pretty neat.
Interesting.
Then Jorge like somehow like distracts them and runs and hides and takes the book. Like maybe, and he sets a fire, right?
Right.
Yeah, and then he's telling them he hates the book because it makes it permissible to laugh at everything. And William brings up a good point. He's like, yeah, there are lots of books that say that. And then he's like, yeah, but the philosophers, they make it where you can turn everything upside down, nothing is serious. And this is where he starts tearing up the book and eating it.
Right.
And that's the library burns down. They get out. Jorge dies. They get out alive. And the girl and are Salvatore and Remedio as well saved? All 3 saved, or
no? Salvatore is burned at the stake.
Damn.
I think everybody is burned at the stake except for her, and I think you even think that she's been burned at the stake. You don't know. You even Slater gets out before Baskerville.
Yeah,
I think
they were trying to make you think maybe Baskerville died towards the end because he wants to save these books.
Right. I question whether it wouldn't have been a better movie if he had.
Yeah, true. And I guess that's almost an exact reversal of how the burnings are presumed to take place in the book, because I don't think that people get burned by the end of the story. It's just, they're going to get burned on the road. But William kind of hypothesizes that Salvatore might get saved, that Bernardo might be like, you did a good job of being a rat, and save him. But he also points out that when Remegio's doing all of his confessing and going crazy and it's like frothing at the mouth and stuff to avoid this torture. He's like, he didn't lose his mind so much that he didn't drag Salvatore down with him with his confession because he ratted him out.
Right.
He ends up implicating him in all these crimes he's confessing to. Oh yeah, and we find out too that that Remigio's been pretty much running a horror house for the monks, and Malachi's in on that, all this stuff, and all kinds of terrible things going on behind the scenes. And that's pretty much the end of the movie. And we find out in the book that Ubertino died 2 years later, being killed by a bandit or something. And Father William lived a long time, but he and Adso, never met again. I don't think.
They parted. Well, they go off together, and then they part ways some years later for some unknown reason. Yeah.
Behind the scenes on this movie, we had the production design was by Dante Ferretti. So this is our second movie we've covered with Dante Ferretti after Interview with the Vampire.
Oh, right.
And that cinematography was by Tonino Delicoli. Music by James Horner.
Yeah.
Delicoli did a lot of it. Once Upon a Time in America.
Good portion of Sergio Leone's movies.
Oh, wow.
Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and Once Upon a Time in the West. Yeah.
Oh, I see that. You're right. Bitter Moon, which brings up that one of the co-writers was Gerard Brock, who was the longtime collaborator, or many-time collaborator with Polanski. And then Alan Godard, who was a collaborator many times with Jean-Jacques Annaud. And, strangely, Howard Franklin.
Howard Franklin?
Yes. The co-director of Quick Change and writer of many comedies. I like Quick Change. I watched a movie he wrote and directed that I hadn't seen called Larger Than Life. Do you remember this movie?
Larger Than Life.
With Bill Murray?
No.
And the elephant. It came out the same time as Operation Dumbo dropped.
Oh,
Twin elephants, both with the same elephant.
Whoa.
It was not Bill Murray's finest. It had some funny parts, but it was a weird movie because another thing about that movie, Larger Than Life, is that it had Matthew McConaughey in it and it was made right before he became a big star, but released after he became a big star. And they knew he was going to become a big star, so they shot extra scenes as reshoots with his character.
Whoa.
And his acting is way over the top and kind of bad in it. It's not one of his finest performances. And it's odd that, it's funny though, because it's watching it knowing that, you try to figure out okay, do we think this is one of the scenes they added? He's a central character to the plot of the movie. I imagine that was the same, but I don't know. But at any rate, I remember them saying that when that came out, that they added to his part, after they made the movie in reshoots. They already had him.
When are we saying that McConaughey became a star?
About 96 or so.
Is that A Time to Kill time?
Yeah, it's from the A Time to Kill era. Yeah.
Yeah, crazy.
And Contact.
And Contact.
Yeah, those were kind of his 1-2 big things I think he had, as I recall, before Amistad.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there. Ugh.
That does it for. Do you have any thoughts on the movie in general? That we didn't.
I like the movie. The movie ranks higher for me than I like the movie because it's another one of those. Not so much because it's a mystery, although I do like the mystery aspect of it. But I like the claustrophobia. It's very similar to The Thing, or I think watching recently Sleepy Hollow. I think The Name of the Rose works better does a lot of things better than Sleepy Hollow, and is a very similar kind of a movie.
Interesting. Well, I guess that brings us to
end spoilers.
The Slater Raider. So you say you like the movie. On a scale of 1 to 10, what do you rate this movie?
10 being the best of the Slaters?
No, just 10 being a 10 out of 10 movie.
Oh, fair enough.
This is the first category is, you rate the...
I think the movie's an 8.
Wow.
I like the movie a lot. Did you not like the movie?
I'm only going to give it a 5.
Oh, wow.
I like the sets. I love the cast, and I love that it's a mystery, and I like that naked lady, but... everybody's so grotesque. I don't really like hanging out with them.
Oh,
the mystery doesn't involve me that much.
See, have you not seen the poster for this movie? I think the original movie poster for this might change your mind to that and at least get you to a 5.5.
I don't know. It might be cool. It did look cool. Yeah, I've seen it. It looks cool. It's I really like the idea of the movie, but it just didn't really do it for me. And I'm very glad that I watched it once before reading the book, because then I think I would have hated it more, because the book was pretty enjoyable.
That's fair.
And it becomes one of those things where I'm not sure now how I really feel, because it's would rewatch the movie after reading the book, and I was like, I don't know if I'm understanding things in this because I read the book, or if I would have known them anyway.
I think the movie's a little vague and maybe to its detriment.
Yeah,
no doubt.
I didn't really get caught up in it the way I would have liked to have.
Yeah,
I'm only going to give it I think 5.5 is very fair. I couldn't quite get to a 6, but I'm going to stick with 5.
Oh, I like it quite a bit. I was really happy to rewatch it actually. And,
interesting.
And didn't notice that I was so happy until I finished it. I was like, oh yeah.
Yeah,
I like it.
I liked parts of it. Okay, now we get to our second category, which is on a scale of 1 to 10. How much did you like Christian Slater's performance?
I like Slater. I don't know how much better you want it to be.
Yeah, I guess you could argue maybe that in a movie where they have so many Euros that maybe he could have gone for an accent because he's supposed to be, what, German? Where is he supposed to be from?
Yeah,
His name's Adso, which doesn't sound German, but the movie takes place in Italy, right?
Right, but everybody's from somewhere else, which is the point that Anand makes in the commentary, is that they're like universities. The only thing they have in common is that they all can read Latin. Really. I don't mind. Yeah, I guess he does try to do some kind of accent. I would argue that Christian Slater does a lot try to do some kind of accent.
Interesting. He does a weird voice.
Much like in Prince of Thieves, he doesn't try to do an English accent like Costner attempts once or twice, maybe, but he does try to do something that's not Slater and not American or whatever. Yeah.
So what do you rate it on 1 to 10?
I'm not going to give Slater as high of a marking as I like the movie, but I'd say I'll give him a 7.
Pretty fair. I'm going to say, let's see. Thought he was pretty good. Not maybe great. I'm also going to go with a 7. But on a scale of 1 to 10 now this is a tricky one with this movie, given what we've discussed. What would you give his acting, his hunkiness rating? Scale of 1 to 10, how hunky did you find Christian Slater in this movie?
I don't think he's hunky. I think there are some hunkier men in this movie, and he is not the hunkiest of them. I'm going to go with a 4.
Yeah, tough call, because I think his beauty is a big thing in the movie. It's just how pretty he is, right? But for me, I'm gonna go low on this too, and say that I'm gonna give it a 3. I'll go 3.
I don't find him very hunky. Even the black monk is probably hunkier than he is.
Yeah,
and
certainly Connery is way hunkier.
Certainly Connery under all of the layers is probably hunkier.
Yeah.
I wonder if Connery is that much taller. Connery plays tall throughout the movie, taller than most of everybody else. I wonder if he's actually that tall.
I don't know. No idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, he does seem quite a bit taller than Christian Slater, who wouldn't be at his full height and is not a tall man. So
No.
Okay.
Taller, even Perlman gets a hunkier rating than he does.
Wow, no way. I'm going to say the Salvatore gets a -20 on hunkiness. Jeez, he's a hunchback with a deformed face.
One tooth.
Yeah. Yeah, I did not enjoy looking at that. Yeah, maybe one of not good.
I'd go with a 9 if there were more Salvatore sex scenes.
Yeah, more Christian Slater penis. I get what you're saying. So on a scale of 1 to 10 now, our final category, this is negative points. -1 to 0 to -10. How much more of Christian Slater would you like in the movie?
I'm going to go with 0. I think it has the right amount of Christian Slater.
You could argue a little too much.
Maybe a little too much.
I will also go with a 0. I think he was in a lot of the movie.
He's almost in every scene.
Yeah, he may be in more of the movie than Sean Connery. I'm not sure if that's true, but maybe, because he has the scenes with the girl that Sean Connery's not even in.
He's got the whole sequence with the girl, yeah. He gets the girl and Connery gets Salvatore.
Yeah, Connery gets scenes talking to Salvatore. That's right. Yeah, so that brings us, that's going to equal, let's see, we got that's a tough one. I think we might have another F on our hands, but I'm not sure. Let's see, we got a 5 and an 8. That's 13 out of 20. Then we've got, on performance, that's a 14 out of 20. So that's a 27 out of 40. And then we've got on hunkiness pretty low ratings. Yeah, I think we're going to get into F territory on Name of the Rose.
Damn.
Before we go, are you reading anything right now?
I am in the middle of I started reading If on a Winter's Night a Traveler by Italo.
Oh, I've heard of this.
Calvino, but
I think you told me about it.
I probably told you. I read the first chapter and a half, and then I had to stop, and I haven't read anything else.
How did you like the chapter and a half you read?
It's really well written. It's pretty gimmicky. Like the whole one. It's each chapter. It's only 8 or 10 chapters, and each chapter is divided into 2 parts. And the first chapter is you reading the chapter, and then you read the chapter.
Oh, weird.
It's like a story about you reading the book.
Interesting.
It's interesting. It's a little gimmicky. I'm not sure I'm in for it.
I don't know if you've heard of this book. It's by one of your countrymen, Arkady. It's by a guy named Ivan Goncharov. It's called
I love
Oblomov.
Goncharov. I've read. Yeah,
it's a book
Oblomov's
a friend got
great.
for me, and I'm about a quarter of the way through it. It's pretty good so far.
Yeah, Goncharov. Yeah, Oblomov's great.
Yeah, I just got past his dream. That's like the last thing I read was the long chapter of his dream. Seen anything good? Been watching anything good?
You mean besides The Name of the Rose?
Yes.
Nah.
No?
Some horror movies. Rewatched The Thing, rewatched The Shining.
Oh, those are good.
Rewatched Halloween.
Never been a big Halloween man.
Oh, I like Halloween. Watched a movie called The New Daughter with Kevin Costner.
Oh, whoa, what's that? Is that on HBO?
Horror movie from a few years ago.
Oh, is that? No, maybe it's Never Let Me Go or something like that. Or Never Let Him Go or something like that.
Oh, yeah, with Diane Lane.
Yeah, that I keep seeing them telling me to watch on HBO.
The New Daughter is not good. And I don't know how you got Kevin Costner to be in this movie, but It's hilarious.
I'm watching films by your favorite director lately. I've been rewatching Randolph Scott, Bud Boddicker westerns. I meant your favorite star. I know you love Randolph Scott.
Very gay. Very gay.
Very gay. I feel like each passing film, he looks gayer. Like I was like, whoa.
Oh, him and
Cary Grant.
Cary Grant. Yeah.
Yeah, I knew that going in this time, not when I'd seen them before, but like I knew that now, and so I was like wondering if that influenced me. But yeah, it's like, but I did watch one I liked. I liked The Tall T, where the villain is one of my favorite actors, Richard Boone.
Right, Richard Boone being a great actor.
Yeah, I really like Richard Boone. He was quite good in it, and I liked that movie. I guess that was based on an Elmore Leonard story. Right,
and that's a Boddicker too as well, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but they always like 2 or 3 others that not as high on.
Yeah, big directors always rave about Boddicker, and I don't.
Yeah,
never enjoyed
I seen
them
one.
all
He
that
did
much.
one with Glenn Ford that I remember thinking was okay. I can't remember the title of it. That I remember thinking was pretty good. And there's another one that I haven't gotten to yet that I think is a Boddicker Randolph Scott, where it's like Randolph Scott is a guy that doesn't show up for the Battle of Little Bighorn. And then feels bad about it. And I remember thinking that one's not terrible. I don't think I'd seen The Tall T before. And I thought that one was pretty decent. It's kind of slow, but it's like the theme runs through pretty well, and Richard Boone is quite enjoyable. Yeah, I liked that one. Yeah, it's like a woman in it that's not supposed to be very attractive, and people just keep talking about how she's unattractive. And Richard Boone's like, she ain't much to look at, or something. Like, there's a part where in the beginning, he says, some guy says she's about the plainest woman he's ever seen or something, the town drunk, and Randolph Scott's like, I've been alone so long, she don't look half bad to me. And he's like, you need to get your eyes fixed, or something like that. And then Randolph Scott and she end up together in the end. I thought it was kind of fun.
Things we couldn't write today.
No.
That's funny, because that just made me think that I know that there's a new Nicolas Cage Western coming out called The Old Way. And then that made me think, I watched Pig. Have you watched Pig yet?
No, but I was thinking about the title that, like people always say, don't work with children or animals. Yeah. And Nicolas Cage is just working with the ugliest animal of all for a whole movie.
Yeah, but not for very long.
Oh, okay. What's that even about?
It's about a chef who has hidden away from society and raises a truffle pig out in the middle of nowhere, Oregon. And he hunts for truffles and sells them to this kid who sells them back in, Hipsterville, Portland. And then he comes home one day and he gets beat up, and somebody has taken his pig and left him for dead. And he goes to Portland to find his pig.
Whoa.
Liked it.
Oh, really?
I liked it.
So this is the one of the 12 Nicolas Cage movies this year that's good.
Yeah. There's a huge billboard at Highland and Melrose telling you that if the Oscars are meant to actually honor good acting, not giving it to Nicolas Cage is a travesty. Hilarious.
That is hilarious.
I don't know about that, but I did enjoy the movie.
Well, on that note, I guess we'll end this episode. Join us next time. Reno Carson will be back, and we'll look at the film The Contender.